Academy is not always right. It sometimes misses movies that are not considered the greatest of all time. So here are the 24 greatest movies that did not win a single Oscar. The Shawshank Redemption. You know, when we talk about the Shawshank Redemption, it's almost tragic how a film that later became a cultural touchstone walked away empty-handed at the Oscars. Back in 1994, the Academy was all abuzz about more conventional, crowd-pleasing narratives. Shawshank, with its slow-burn redemption arc and unhurried pacing, was perhaps just too unconventional for its time. While Forrest Gump stole the night with its heartfelt sentimentality and a storyline that tugged at every heartstring, Shawshank's subtle, nuanced performances and quiet dignity didn't tick the traditional boxes the Academy was looking for. Its lack of flashy spectacle or overt sentimentality meant that its brilliance was only truly recognized by audiences and cinephiles over time. Even though it's now considered a timeless classic and holds the top spot on IMDb's list, back then it was overlooked because the Oscars tend to favor films that immediately connect with the industry's idea of award-worthy drama. It's as if the film's gentle insistence on the triumph of the human spirit was too understated for a night when big, bold narratives were in the spotlight. It's a reminder that sometimes greatness isn't acknowledged in its own time. 12 Angry Men. Consider 12 Angry Men, a movie that feels like a masterclass in acting, writing, and directing, yet somehow it didn't snag any Oscars. Back in 1957, the film's power lay in its razor-sharp dialogue and the tension simmering in a single, confined room. The story of 12 jurors grappling with justice was executed with such precision that it remains one of cinema's finest examinations of human character. However, the competition that year was fierce. The Bridge on the River Kwai was taking home multiple awards and capturing the imagination of the Academy. In a way, 12 Angry Men might have been seen as too minimalist, too focused on a confined setting, and lacking the epic scale that the Oscars love. Its brilliance was in its simplicity and the way it challenged audiences to think deeply about prejudice and human fallibility. But that kind of intellectual rigor didn't always translate into awards gold. The film's understated approach, its reliance on dialogue and the power of a single room, may have been viewed as less glamorous compared to the bombast of other contenders. Still, its legacy endures as one of the most compelling examinations of the human condition in film. Psycho. Now let's chat about Psycho, a film that changed the game for thrillers and horror alike, yet never managed to secure an Oscar. Alfred Hitchcock's magnum opus is filled with spine-tingling suspense, groundbreaking visuals, and an audacity that still shocks audiences today. Despite being nominated for a few Oscars, it didn't win a single one. Part of the issue might have been that the Academy wasn't ready for a film that disrupted convention so boldly. Hitchcock's style, marked by its psychological complexity, unconventional narrative, and even its infamous shower scene, was too innovative for the traditional award voters, who leaned towards more conventional storytelling. The film's eerie atmosphere and tension-building techniques were ahead of their time, and its deviation from the typical Hollywood formula meant it didn't fit neatly into the established categories. Audiences and critics came to revere Psycho for its daring approach and lasting impact on filmmaking, but at the time it simply didn't check all the boxes for Oscar consideration. In a sense, the film's very brilliance lay in its rebellion against the norm, making its lack of recognition an ironic twist in cinematic history. Stand By Me. Stand By Me is one of those films that perfectly captures the bittersweet magic of youth, yet it somehow didn't secure an Oscar despite its cultural impact. Rob Reiner's adaptation of Stephen King's novella is a coming-of-age tale that strikes a chord with audiences through its honest portrayal of friendship, loss, and the innocence of childhood adventures. It's a story told with warmth, humor, and a touch of melancholy, qualities that resonate deeply with anyone who's ever experienced the trials of growing up. However, during awards season, the film was up against projects that offered more conventional drama or historical gravitas. Its understated narrative and naturalistic style didn't quite match the grand, sweeping dramas that tend to win over the Academy. The screenplay, though beautifully written, might have been seen as too low-key for the awards circuit, and the ensemble of young actors, despite delivering heartfelt performances, didn't come packaged with the Oscar-worthy star power the voters were looking for. Stand By Me has since become a beloved classic, celebrated for its honest portrayal of youth and its universal appeal, even if it never received the accolades it so richly deserved on Oscar night. Singin' in the Rain. When you think about Singin' in the Rain, you picture Gene Kelly dancing in the rain with unbridled joy. Yet the film missed out on key Oscar wins. Despite its dazzling musical numbers and innovative blend of humor, romance, and showbiz satire, the film was only nominated for a couple of awards. At the time, musicals were often relegated to a lower tier in the eyes of the Academy, even if they were marvels of choreography and technical wizardry. Singin' in the Rain's charm lies in its self-aware look at the transition from silent films to talkies, a historical moment that might have seemed less dramatic compared to the epic narratives that year. The film's playful spirit and kinetic energy, which have now cemented its status as one of the greatest musicals ever made, didn't translate into the sort of Oscar-friendly drama that voters typically reward. Gene Kelly's exuberance and the film's technical achievements in dance and music were simply ahead of their time, challenging the traditional expectations of award ceremonies. In essence, its lack of recognition was less about any shortfall in quality and more about the Academy's narrow view of what constituted cinematic excellence at that moment. It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life is a film that has become synonymous with holiday cheer and timeless inspiration. Yet on its initial Oscar run, it failed to win a single award. Frank Capra's heartwarming tale of redemption and community is now celebrated as a perennial classic. But back in 1946, its sentimental approach didn't quite capture the Academy's imagination. The film's message about the value of every life and the importance of community might have been too earnest for voters who were more inclined towards gritty realism or grand historical epics. Even though James Stewart delivered one of his most iconic performances, the film was seen as a modest, feel-good story rather than a groundbreaking cinematic achievement. Its modest box office performance at the time also played a role in the Academy's decision, overshadowed by more commercially successful contenders. Over the decades, however, audiences have come to recognize the film's profound emotional impact and its enduring message. In a twist of fate, what was once considered overly sentimental is now seen as one of the greatest cinematic expressions of hope and humanity, proving that sometimes true greatness isn't recognized until long after the awards have been given. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly stands as a towering achievement in Western cinema, yet despite its epic storytelling and unforgettable characters, it never brought home an Oscar. Sergio Leone's masterpiece redefined the Western genre with its sprawling narrative, stylistic innovation, and an iconic score. But the film's unorthodox structure and long runtime didn't align with the Academy's preferences at the time. The movie's gritty realism, coupled with a violent yet poetic portrayal of the American frontier, challenged traditional norms of storytelling that were more comfortable with conventional heroics and tidy resolutions. The Oscars tend to favor films that fit a particular mold, and here the sheer audacity of Leone's vision, filled with morally ambiguous characters and a raw, unfiltered look at human nature, simply didn't fit into that box. Instead, the film's brilliance was recognized later by generations of cinephiles and critics who appreciated its bold stylistic choices and its influence on later filmmakers. Ultimately, its failure to secure an Oscar wasn't a reflection of its quality, but rather a sign of the times. A film so ahead of its time that the awards machinery couldn't quite catch up to its revolutionary spirit. Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver is one of those movies that digs deep into the psyche of modern urban alienation. Yet it didn't win an Oscar despite its iconic status. Martin Scorsese's portrayal of Travis Bickle, a disturbed cab driver spiraling into a vigilante's descent, was a raw, gritty exploration of loneliness and societal decay. Although the film garnered several nominations, including Best Picture, the Academy seemed hesitant to fully embrace its dark, provocative themes. In a time when more polished, conventional narratives were in vogue, Taxi Driver's unapologetic depiction of urban isolation and violence may have been too unsettling for the voters. The film's complex character study, coupled with Robert De Niro's mesmerizing performance, pushed the boundaries of what was considered Oscar material. Its unflinching realism and intense focus on the darker aspects of American life were perhaps a bit too challenging for an awards body more accustomed to uplifting or straightforward dramas. Even so, Taxi Driver's lasting impact on cinema is undeniable, and its legacy as a masterpiece of psychological storytelling endures far beyond the fleeting judgments of award ceremonies. The Shining. When it comes to The Shining, Stanley Kubrick's foray into psychological horror still sends shivers down our spines, yet it didn't earn a single Oscar. The film's eerie atmosphere, innovative camera work, and bone-chilling score created a horror masterpiece that redefined the genre. But here's the thing. The Academy was never really in love with horror, especially not one as subtly menacing and psychologically intricate as this. Instead of celebrating its groundbreaking approach to building tension and exploring the dark recesses of the human mind, the Oscars chose to overlook it completely. Kubrick's signature style, marked by long tracking shots and a meticulous attention to detail, might have been too cerebral or even too disturbing for voters expecting more conventional narratives. The film's deliberate pacing and emphasis on mood over conventional plot progression didn't make for easy awards categories. Over time, however, audiences and critics have come to see The Shining as a towering work of art that challenged the very nature of cinematic horror. Its failure to win Oscars speaks more to the limitations of the award system than to any lack of quality in Kubrick's visionary work. 7. Seven is a film that leaves an indelible mark with its dark, relentless exploration of human depravity, yet it didn't win big at the Oscars. David Fincher's neo-noir thriller is an atmospheric, meticulously crafted journey into the mind of a serial killer, where every frame oozes tension and dread. Despite earning a nomination for Best Editing, the film was largely passed over by the Academy. One possible reason is that its unflinching portrayal of moral decay, complete with disturbing visuals and a grim narrative, didn't exactly fit the mold of a traditional awards contender. The film's brooding tone and nihilistic themes were a departure from the more optimistic or straightforward dramas that usually snag top honors. Fincher's stylistic choices, such as the innovative silver retention process to create a perpetually rainy, grimy atmosphere, set C7 apart, but they were perhaps seen as too avant-garde or unsettling for Oscar voters. Even though its impact on thriller filmmaking is undeniable, and its influence can be seen in countless films that followed, C7's raw, uncompromising vision just wasn't the type of escapism or grandeur that the Academy traditionally celebrated. It remains a cult classic, remembered for its daring artistry and haunting legacy. The Color Purple. Steven Spielberg's The Color Purple is a film that tells a powerful, poignant story of struggle and redemption, yet it remains notorious for its lack of Oscar wins despite receiving a whopping 11 nominations. The film's narrative centered on the life of an African-American woman in early 20th century America, delved deep into themes of oppression, resilience, and ultimately, hope. Even with Whoopi Goldberg delivering a breakthrough performance, the film was pitted against more traditional period pieces in epic dramas during its award season run. The Academy at the time was perhaps unprepared for such an unflinching look at racial and gender injustices, opting instead for films that adhered to a more conventional storytelling style. Spielberg's direction, though visually and emotionally stirring, might have been seen as too heavy-handed or sentimental for voters looking for subtlety. Moreover, the film's ambitious scope and the challenges of adapting a beloved, complex novel meant that its innovations and raw emotional power were somewhat lost in translation on Oscar night. In retrospect, The Color Purple's failure to win Oscars is less a reflection of its quality and more an indictment of the evolving tastes and sometimes limited vision of the awards process at the time. Reservoir Dogs. Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs is a film that practically redefined independent cinema with its razor-sharp dialogue and gritty, non-linear storytelling. Yet it never managed to break through at the Oscars. When the movie hit the scene in 1992, it was seen as an underground indie flick, a bold, violent, and stylized debut that wasn't exactly tailored for the traditional awards circuit. The film's raw intensity, quirky characters, and clever twists set a new benchmark for crime dramas, but its unconventional narrative and graphic violence didn't sit well with an academy that preferred more polished fare. Reservoir Dogs was a risk, a movie that wasn't afraid to mix brutal realism with dark humor and intricate storytelling. Tarantino's debut showed off his signature style, which would later become a cornerstone of modern cinema. Yet at the time, it was too edgy, too unorthodox for Oscar voters who tended to favor a more conventional approach to filmmaking. The movie's lack of Oscar wins highlights how the boundaries of cinematic art can sometimes push past the rigid structures of established award traditions, leaving a legacy that's celebrated by audiences long after the votes are cast. Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Dr. Strangelove is one of those films that manages to be both outrageously funny and biting in its political satire, yet it never walked away with an Oscar. Stanley Kubrick took a razor-sharp look at the absurdity of nuclear warfare, blending dark humor with a serious undercurrent of paranoia. Despite receiving several nominations, the film's satirical approach may have been too unconventional for the Academy's taste, which often favors more traditional, earnest narratives. Its clever mix of comedy and grim reality, embodied in Kubrick's meticulous direction and the unforgettable performances, challenged the very idea of what a war movie could be. In an era when the political climate was fraught with tension, the film's irreverent take on global annihilation struck a nerve, but not in the way that translated to awards. The Oscars, it seems, were more comfortable with straightforward heroics or melodramatic portrayals than with a film that dared to laugh at the face of impending doom. Dr. Strangelove's lack of wins isn't a slight on its brilliance. Rather, it's a testament to how its innovative, boundary-pushing humor was simply too ahead of its time for a conventional award ceremony. Rear Window. Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window is a masterclass in suspense and voyeuristic intrigue, yet it never brought home an Oscar despite its lasting popularity. The film's genius lies in its ability to transform a single location, a modest apartment complex and its courtyard, into a stage for a riveting mystery that unfolds through the eyes of its curious protagonist. With Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly leading the charge, Rear Window captivated audiences with its ingenious plot and finely tuned tension. However, the Academy seemed to overlook its brilliance, perhaps because the film's subtle, observational style didn't match the sweeping, dramatic narratives that usually won awards. Hitchcock's signature blend of psychological tension and everyday realism, while groundbreaking, might have been seen as too understated or even too middle of the road for an awards night that favored larger-than-life epics. The film's quiet intensity and the art of suggestion over overt drama meant that its innovative storytelling was underappreciated by a body that preferred more conventional cinematic flourishes. In the end, Rear Window remains a beloved example of Hitchcock's mastery, proving that sometimes the most influential films are the ones that slip through the cracks of the traditional award system. Blade Runner. Blade Runner is a science fiction classic that redefined the genre with its visionary aesthetics and philosophical undertones. Yet it failed to win Oscars despite its enormous influence. Ridley Scott's futuristic noir painted a dystopian world that was as visually stunning as it was thought-provoking. In 1982, the film's unique blend of neo-noir and sci-fi elements was perhaps too unconventional for the Academy, which wasn't accustomed to celebrating films that strayed from realistic storytelling. The dazzling visuals, groundbreaking production design, and haunting Vangelis score created an atmosphere that was both mesmerizing and disquieting. However, its narrative complexity and ambiguous moral questions may have left the voters scratching their heads, preferring more straightforward plots and characters. Blade Runner's existential themes and its exploration of what it means to be human were far ahead of their time, challenging audiences to think deeply rather than simply entertain. This departure from the norm, along with its initial box office struggles, likely contributed to its snub. Today, Blade Runner is celebrated for its artistic risk-taking and its lasting impact on both cinema and pop culture. A reminder that sometimes visionary films aren't fully recognized by award bodies until years later. Memento is one of Christopher Nolan's early masterpieces, a film that plays with memory and narrative in a way that completely rewired how we think about storytelling. Despite its clever structure and undeniable impact on modern cinema, Memento went home without an Oscar. Its nonlinear narrative and reverse storytelling were innovative and mind-bending, but they also made it a tough sell for the Academy, which has historically favored more conventional narratives. The film's fragmented approach forces audiences to piece together the story like a puzzle, a technique that, while brilliant, may have been too challenging for voters used to traditional plotlines. Moreover, Memento's focus on themes of memory, identity, and the elusive nature of truth was seen as cerebral and experimental, a departure from the more emotionally straightforward films that tend to win awards. Even though the film has since cemented its reputation as a modern classic, its initial reception in award circles was muted. Memento's lack of Oscar recognition is a testament to how groundbreaking, genre-defying films can sometimes fall outside the narrow parameters of what the Academy deems award-worthy, even when they change the way we experience cinema forever. Once Upon a Time in America. Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in America is a sprawling epic that captures the rise and fall of dreams in a world of organized crime, yet it never managed to secure an Oscar. The film's lengthy runtime, non-linear structure, and uncompromising vision made it a cinematic odyssey, one that challenged both audiences and critics alike. Its narrative, filled with layers of nostalgia, regret, and the corrosive passage of time, demanded patience and emotional investment. In the cutthroat world of awards season, however, its epic scale and intricate storytelling might have been seen as overly ambitious, if not a bit too indulgent. The film was subject to extensive editing and re-editing, resulting in versions that diluted its original artistic intent. Leone's unique blend of operatic storytelling and brutal realism didn't fit neatly into the categories that the Academy was comfortable with at the time. While its haunting score and unforgettable performances have earned it a lasting legacy among cinephiles, the Oscars largely overlooked its profound narrative and stylistic innovations. In many ways, Once Upon a Time in America remains an enduring testament to artistic vision that was simply too grand and unruly for the confines of the awards process. Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day is a film that's become a cultural phenomenon, a brilliant blend of humor, philosophy, and the magic of second chances. Yet it didn't receive the Oscar love it deserved. Harold Ramis's clever take on the concept of time looping, where Bill Murray's every day is both a blessing and a curse, was an innovative idea that had audiences laughing and pondering life's deeper meaning. Despite its originality, the film was pitted against more conventional comedies and dramas during awards season. Its whimsical narrative, which challenges the very nature of time and personal transformation, was perhaps too offbeat for a voting body used to straightforward storytelling. The humor, while brilliantly executed, mixed with existential undertones, might have seemed too quirky or niche for the Academy's taste. Groundhog Day's charm lies in its ability to be both thought-provoking and entertaining, but that duality didn't translate into traditional Oscar categories. Its failure to win major awards highlights a recurring trend. Films that defy genre expectations often have to wait until later years to be truly appreciated for their forward-thinking ideas and lasting impact on pop culture. Heat. Heat is one of those rare films that brought together titans like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, creating a masterpiece of tension and intricate storytelling, but it surprisingly didn't win any Oscars. Michael Mann's 1995 neo-noir thriller delves deep into the psychology of criminals and law enforcers alike, portraying the fine line between order and chaos. Despite its intense action sequences, compelling character arcs, and a narrative that masterfully builds suspense, Heat was passed over during awards season. One reason might be that the film's gritty realism and sprawling runtime didn't align with the Academy's preference for more polished, conventional fare. Its unflinching portrayal of moral ambiguity and the relentless pressure of life on both sides of the law may have been seen as too raw for the traditional award circuit. Even though critics and audiences alike hail it as one of the best crime dramas ever made, the film's complex, layered storytelling and understated yet powerful performances were perhaps lost in translation on Oscar night. Heat remains a cult classic, a film that epitomizes the art of tension and realism, proving that sometimes the most groundbreaking movies aren't recognized by awards until long after their initial release. Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is a movie that mixes comedy, supernatural hijinks, and a generous dose of 1980s charm, yet it didn't win the Oscars despite its enduring popularity. The film's blend of witty dialogue, creative special effects, and a unique ensemble cast turned a simple ghost-catching concept into a cultural phenomenon. Despite receiving nominations in technical categories, the Academy was never fully sold on a comedy that didn't fit the traditional mold of dramatic storytelling. The lighthearted, irreverent approach of Ghostbusters, filled with memorable one-liners and quirky characters, was a departure from the gravitas typically rewarded by the Oscars. In an era when blockbusters were expected to deliver epic narratives and grand visual spectacles, this film's tongue-in-cheek humor and offbeat premise may have been too unconventional. It's not that the film wasn't technically proficient. Its special effects and inventive design were ahead of their time. Instead, its playful spirit and cult status, which have only grown over the decades, simply didn't align with the Academy's vision of award-worthy cinema. Ghostbusters remains a beloved classic, proving that sometimes a film's true legacy lies not in accolades, but in the joy it brings to audiences. A Clockwork Orange. A Clockwork Orange is a film that boldly delves into themes of violence, free will, and societal control. Yet despite its controversial subject matter and striking visual style, it didn't come away with any Oscars. Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of Anthony Burgess's novel is as thought-provoking as it is unsettling, challenging viewers with its stark portrayal of dystopian behavior and the ethics of state control. The film's provocative imagery, disturbing narrative, and unforgettable performance by Malcolm McDowell made it a landmark in cinematic history, but they also made it a hard sell for a conservative awards body. The Academy at the time was not prepared to fully embrace such a polarizing work that pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable on screen. Its unapologetic exploration of violence and moral ambiguity, paired with Kubrick's distinctive style, set it apart as a true cinematic experiment rather than a conventional drama. Though its influence on film and popular culture is immeasurable, A Clockwork Orange was too radical for the Oscars, whose tastes leaned towards more sanitized narratives. Its legacy endures as a powerful statement on the nature of free will and the dangers of authoritarianism. A film that continues to spark debate and admiration far beyond the confines of awards season. Do the Right Thing. Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing is a searing exploration of race, community, and social justice. Yet it didn't secure any major Oscar wins despite its profound impact. The film's unflinching portrayal of racial tensions in a Brooklyn neighborhood is as timely as it is timeless, capturing the raw energy of social conflict with authenticity and passion. Lee's bold directorial style, which mixes vibrant visuals with hard-hitting dialogue, challenged conventional narratives and pushed the boundaries of what mainstream cinema could tackle. However, its confrontational approach and unapologetic political commentary may have been too provocative for the Academy at the time. Instead of being celebrated for its fearless depiction of societal issues, the film was perhaps seen as too divisive or too rooted in a specific cultural moment. Its focus on the complexities of race and identity, combined with moments of both humor and tragedy, made it a true masterpiece of social commentary, but not one that fit neatly into the traditional awards categories. Over the years, Do the Right Thing has grown in stature and influence. Remembered as a catalyst for change and a landmark in American cinema, even without the backing of Oscar Gold. Being John Malkovich. Being John Malkovich is one of those delightfully offbeat films that takes you on a surreal journey into the mind of celebrity. Yet it didn't win any Oscars despite its originality. Spike Jonze's quirky vision of a portal into actor John Malkovich's inner world is a wild, imaginative ride that defies conventional storytelling. The film's blend of absurd humor, existential musings, and inventive narrative twists set it apart from anything the award circuit had seen before. Its screenplay, co-written by Charlie Kaufman, is filled with clever dialogue and bizarre scenarios that challenge viewers to rethink reality and identity. However, the film's unconventional approach and whimsical style may have been too far removed from the expected narrative formulas to be recognized on Oscar night. While its creative risks and inventive concept garnered a cult following and critical acclaim, they didn't translate into the traditional metrics of award-winning cinema. In a way, being John Malkovich's failure to win major awards only underscores its status as a true original. A film that dared to break all the rules and invite audiences into a world where the surreal becomes the norm. Its legacy lives on as a testament to creativity unbound by convention. Children of Men. Finally, we have Children of Men, a visionary, dystopian thriller by Alfonso Cuarón that portrays a future where humanity faces its ultimate crisis, yet it didn't secure any Oscars despite its breathtaking artistry. The film's narrative, set in a world plagued by infertility and despair, is as harrowing as it is visually arresting. Cuarón's innovative use of long takes and immersive cinematography creates an intense, almost claustrophobic atmosphere that draws viewers into a nightmarish reality. Although the film was nominated for several technical awards, its daring thematic material and unconventional storytelling perhaps didn't resonate with the traditional expectations of Oscar voters. The raw emotional power, coupled with its stark commentary on societal collapse and human resilience, made Children of Men a cinematic tour de force, one that was too forward-thinking for its time. Its absence of wins speaks less to any shortfall in quality and more to the inherent risks of presenting a bleak, futuristic vision that challenges the status quo. Even without the accolades, the film's impact on audiences and filmmakers alike is undeniable, marking it as a timeless piece of art that dares us to imagine a future that is both terrifying and hauntingly beautiful.